All right. Well, we're on chapter 5 of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna tonight. The Master and Keshav. Now, Keshav was the leader of the Brahmo Samaj, I believe, and so he's going to see him on a steamer tonight, on a steamship. And he starts off here with a beautiful description. It's October 27th, 1882. So it's monsoon, or the monsoon is, in full swing, I think, in October. It was Friday, the day of the Lakshmi Puja. Keshav Chandra Sen had arranged a boat trip on the Ganges for Sri Ramakrishna. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the steamboat with Keshav and his Brahmo followers cast anchor in the Ganges alongside the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar. The passengers saw in front of them the bathing ghat and the Chandni. To their left, in the temple compound, stood 6 temples of Shiva, and to their right, another group of 6 Shiva temples. Oh, so they're at the ghat right there in the, not where the boat lands now, but I guess in the early days, the boat landed in between the sets of Shiva temples where that big flight of stairs comes down. The white steeple of the Kali temple, the treetops of the Panchavati, and the silhouette of the pine tree stood high against the blue autumn sky. The gardens between the 2 Nahabats were filled with fragrant flowers, and along the bank of Ganges were rows of flowering plants. The blue sky was reflected in the brown water of the river, the sacred Ganges, associated with the most ancient traditions of Aryan civilization. The outer world appeared soft and serene, and the hearts of the Brahmo devotees were filled with peace. Sri Ramakrishna was in his room, talking with Vijay and Haralal. Some disciples of Keshav entered. Bowing before the master, they said to him, "Sir, the steamer has arrived. Keshav Babu has asked us to take you there." A small boat was to carry the master to the steamer. No sooner did he get into the boat than he lost outer consciousness in samadhi. Vijay was with him. When I read that, I always wonder what it was that triggered Sri Ramakrishna's samadhi. It was usually something makes his mind think of God. And so I was wondering in this situation if getting into the boat reminded him of crossing the ocean or the sea of samsara to arrive at the other shore. Since that's a common way of talking about this life, taking the boat across. And so thus throwing him into samadhi, because it's a rather profound samadhi this time. You'll see here, it doesn't go away right away. M was among the passengers. As the boat came alongside the steamer, all rushed to the railing to have a view of Sri Ramakrishna. Keshav became anxious to get him safely on board. With great difficulty, the master was brought back to consciousness of the world and taken to a cabin in the steamer. Still in an abstracted mood, he walked mechanically, leaning on the devotee for support. Keshav and the other devotees bowed before him, but he was not aware of them. Inside the cabin there were few chairs and a table. He was made to sit on one of the chairs, Keshav and Vijay occupying 2 others. Some devotees were also seated, most of them on the floor, while many others had to stand outside. They peered eagerly through the door and windows. Sri Ramakrishna again went into deep samadhi and became totally unconscious of the outer world. As the air in the room was stuffy because of the crowd of people, Keshav opened the windows. He was embarrassed to meet Vijay, since they had differed on certain principles of the Brahmo Samaj, and Vijay had separated himself from Keshav's organization, joining another society. The Brahmo devotees looked wistfully at the master. Gradually, he came back to sense consciousness, but the divine intoxication still lingered. He said to himself in a whisper, "Mother, why have you brought me here? They are hedged around and not free. Can I free them? Did the master find that the people assembled there were locked within the prison walls of the world? Did their helplessness make the master address these words to the Divine Mother? This whole scenario is so profound. I mean, to see someone in samadhi, I don't know. Has anyone witnessed samadhi? Any of you seen someone go into samadhi?
No.
No, I haven't actually either. I've seen someone in deep meditation, but never vacant from the body like this. And to have him sitting there, and he's brought into the steamer, sitting in the chair, and he's looking around and he says, Mother, why have you brought me here? Isn't it's amazing what that betrays about his mind, the way he thought. Everywhere he was, it was because Mother had brought him there. And he was so surrendered at the feet of the Mother that not only had she brought him there, but that he saw himself there as an instrument for whatever she wanted to have him do there. Just such a fundamentally, completely surrendered way of being. We are so engrossed in our own idea of running our life and running the show that we are the ones that take ourselves anywhere. It never occurs to us that it's Mother taking us to these places. And when we go to those places, we have our own ideas of why we're there, because we're so anchored in our ego, anchored in our mind. And so we have our own purposes and our own egos. We're not aware of the Divine Mother and the Divine Mother's will for us in our life. And so to watch this is quite a beautiful recentering, a way of really challenging your surrender. It's like to know that everywhere that you go, Mother is taking you there, and that she has a reason for taking you there, and that a person who lives in a surrendered mind is always standing like a butler, at the edge of the table while everybody's being served, fully attentive as to who needs what, anticipating their needs before they even announce them. I saw a little bit of this. Greg's not here that I can see at the moment, but he really gave me a great example of that. When I first joined the monastery, he had been in the monastery for 20 years as a brahmachari. And he was super, super well trained in the best of ways. So like we would sit down and have this big dinner, with all the devotees sitting around the table, sometimes up to 20 people. And Greg would just constantly be aware of everything at the table. And I noted when I joined that often he would pass the salt or pass the bread or pass whatever to somebody before they had to ask for it. Because he would just look around and he'd say, oh, that person just put pancakes on their plate. They're going to need the butter. They're going to need the syrup. And he would immediately pass it down. And sometimes as they were asking for it, he would already be handing it in that way. And I think that, for us as mature spiritual seekers, that's how we live our life. But our eyes, our inner eyes, are always on the Divine Mother. And our attentiveness is always to service, always to compassion. Who else talks that way is the Peace Pilgrim. Peace Pilgrim, do you know her story? If not, look it up online. You can get her book for free. She was a woman, an American woman, who just walked out of her house one day and vowed that she would walk until she was given shelter, that she would walk until given shelter, and that she would fast until given food. And that was her only commitment. And she would speak only about peace, only about peace. And she said that to her, every moment is an opportunity to serve. And so she literally spent her life. She walked back and forth across the United States several times before she died, talking only about peace. And she only had what she wore. She didn't carry any luggage, a suitcase, a backpack, anything. When she walked out of her house that day, she had a comb, a little notepad, and a pencil, and they were in the pocket of her apron. And that's all she ever owned. She did not collect anything else as she wandered. And she just wandered back and forth across the states, speaking about truth. And she was given shelter and she was given food. And her story is quite beautiful. But that's one of the things that she said. Every moment to me is an opportunity to serve. And she was the one that says that she stands like a butler to the divine, always being attentive to how she can be helpful in the world. And so you see this in these holy people who have done the unthinkable, surrendered truly and in a very real way, a tangible way, surrendered themselves to God, so that Ramakrishna would never go somewhere of his own accord and think that he had a reason to be there. It was always being taken by the mother and always being at her service for what she wanted there. And he could see, in that pure mind, he could see the bondage of everyone around him. And he wanted, his first question is, can I set them free? It's just like a young kid walking into a pet store and be like, can I let them out? Can we can we open all the gates and let all the puppies out? And so that was his heart. That was the heart of the master here, in that attentive desire and surrender to service. Sri Ramakrishna was gradually becoming conscious of the outside world. Nil Madhav of Ghazipur and a Brahmo devotee were talking with Pavari Baba. Another Brahmo devotee said to the master, "Sir, these gentlemen visited Pavari Baba. He lives in Ghazipur. He is a holy man like yourself." The master could hardly talk. He only smiled. The devotee continued, "Sir, Pavari Baba keeps your photograph in his room." Pointing to his body, the master said with a smile, "Just a pillowcase." As we know from reading in other places, that's how he viewed the human body. He said, when we die, we just take off one pillowcase and put on another if we're being reborn. So he saw this as just a covering. His actual experience of it was that. And he knew himself to be separate from the body, so he saw it as his pillowcase. The master continued, "But you should remember that the heart of the devotee is the abode of God. He dwells, no doubt, in all beings, but he especially manifests himself in the heart of a devotee. A landlord may at one time or another visit all the parts of his estate, but people say he is generally to be found in a particular drawing room. The heart of the devotee is the drawing room of God." So looking out to see how he decorates his drawing room. But what a great notion that God hangs out there, and not just on a basis of coming around every so often to check on you. This is his favorite drawing room. He hangs out in your heart as often as he possibly can. Always, actually. He would drop dead if he didn't. He who is called Brahman by the Gyanis is known as Atman by the Yogis and as Bhagavan by the Bhaktas. The same Brahman is called priest when worshipping in the temple and cook when preparing a meal in the kitchen. The Gyani, sticking to the path of knowledge, always reasons about the reality, saying, "Not this, not this." Brahman is neither this nor that. It is neither the universe nor its living beings. Reasoning in this way, the mind becomes steady. Yeah, this is that notion of a big it's a lot going on in my head here, sorry. But he says that this is the way that the mind becomes steady. When you sink down, how to say that? It's a process, and it's probably different for different people, but it's that notion of recognizing the world as being just a sequence of thinking in the mind. And when you become aware and start to understand that the world is only a collection of thoughts happening within mind, waves from samskaras in the mind, you can drop below that. And instead of being attached to them, engaged with them and living as if this world here was real, when you become that witness, when you come below the active mind and settle more in this permanent unchanging shrine of the heart, then that lack of interest, like Sri Nisargadatta says, is what causes the mind to still. That the mind only stays active when you're interested in it, meaning when you're attached to thoughts or attached to particular thoughts or ideas. When you attach to those things, that's what causes the mind to vibrate, to deliver more of the same to you. You know, if someone hands you a blue egg and you're like, ooh, I like blue eggs, you know, then the mind will start delivering all the things related to blue eggs to you in your mind, and it'll create that state of being. So even here we see the master talking about this discernment of seeing the world as it really is what causes the mind to stop, to silence, because you, the self, naturally withdraw your attachment to the particulars of something that's always changing, that never is static, that never is what it appears to be. It's always moving, it's always in flux. Reasoning in this way, the mind becomes steady. Then it disappears and the aspirant goes into samadhi. So there's an added little detail right there, that the mind, when it calms like that, when it quiets, the experience is that it disappears, that this world is no more, that you have transcended it. You're now on a different plane of consciousness. And I only say the different plane of consciousness, not because that's really what it was, because the master's body was still remaining on the. So the Jnani, sticking to the path of knowledge, always reasons about the reality, saying, not this, not this. Brahman is neither this nor that. It is neither the universe nor its living beings. Reasoning in this way, the mind becomes steady. Then it disappears, and the aspirant goes into samadhi. This is the knowledge of Brahman. It is the unwavering conviction of the Jnani that Brahman alone is real, and the world illusory. All these names and forms are illusory, like a dream. What Brahman is cannot be described. One cannot even say that Brahman is a person. This is the opinion of the Jnanis, the followers of the Vedanta philosophy. And this is what they experience. And it's this conviction about the unreality of the world, the fact that it lacks any substance whatsoever, that which holds it all up, the substance of the universe and all things beyond, is Brahman. It is that existence which allows everything to exist. But that existence is all inclusive plus, right? So at one point I was talking with my father, and he accused me of being a pantheist, because the Vedanta believes that God is present in all things. But we're not pantheists, because the pantheist says the universe is God, but the Vedantist does not say the universe is God. There's always this is and more. There is no definition of God that catches God. And so whenever a Vedantist talks about God being the universe, there's always God is the universe and more and beyond. And so if somebody wants to get technical with you, we are panentheists, not pantheists. In that we believe that God is present, is the substance of all things and more. There is no limit. There is no boundary when we talk about the beloved, about the divine. But the bhaktas, they accept all the states of consciousness. They take the waking state to be real also. They don't think the world to be illusory, like a dream. They say that the universe is a manifestation of God's power and his glory. God has created all these: the sky, the stars, the moon, the sun, the mountains, the ocean, men, animals. They constitute his glory. He is within us, in our hearts. Again, he's also outside. The most advanced devotee says that he himself has become all of this, the 24 cosmic principles, the universe, and all living beings. The devotee of God wants to eat sugar, not become sugar. So that's the real, that's the difference, you know. But you can see the sameness of it, right? You can see that it's a matter of perspective, that both of those situations are true. That it is in fact God has become all of this because we accept it as real. We're like, oh yeah, that table's real. Oh yeah, this is all real. And so God has become all of this. But the Gyanis like to think, no, we're sleeping. It's like a dream. Even though you can tap on that table, it's not real. It's a dream table. But they will still come to know that in the end, God is the only substance. So anything existent is God, or seemingly existent is the divine. It's just that they won't hold on to any of the particulars. They won't let this world of matter define their experience of being. They insist on their knowledge defining their being, their knowledge that God is one without a second, that he is all things and more, that he cannot be particularized. And so through that, they come to that realization. Whereas the devotees see God everywhere, see this as a dance and a play with the beloved. And through that love which forms, that love that forms between you and your idea of God is God. That is the God of the bhakta, that love that forms between, well, I like to I like to say it this way. You've got your inadequate concept of yourself, which is wrong, right? You don't know who you are or what you are. You think you're a body mind. And you've got this horribly inadequate vision of or concept of God in your mind. And so you have this inadequate concept of God and this wrong concept of yourself, and you place them in the shrine of the heart, right? And what happens is that between these two elements, love is born. And your inadequate idea of God and your wrong attitude, concept of yourself, both merge, they disappear into the manifest love, all-encompassing love that brings the two together, that divinity that brings them together. And so that love absorbs the two entities, and in love that union happens, that one without a second happens. So he says the devotee of God wants to eat sugar, not to become sugar. So the ideal for us is to go to heaven and be with God forever. That's the ideal for a bhakti. We just want the sweetness. We want that interaction. We just want to gaze into God's eyes. We want to sit next to him, next to the creek, and nestle in the crook of his arm and lay our head on his shoulders and be fully understood and fully embraced by him, having him accept everything about us as we know everything about him. So that's the idea of the bhakta. That's what the bhakta's highest ideal is just beautiful love, infinite, deep, and without end. So the devotee of God wants to eat sugar, not to become sugar. Everyone laughs. Do you know how a lover of God feels? His attitude is, "Oh God, you are my master, and I am your servant. You are the mother, and I'm your child." Or again, "You're my father and mother. You are the whole, and I am a part." He doesn't like to say, "I am Brahman." The yogi seeks to realize the Paramatman, the Supreme Soul. His ideal is the union of the embodied soul and the Supreme Soul. He withdraws his mind from sense objects and tries to concentrate it on the Paramatman. Therefore, during the first stage of his spiritual discipline, he retires into solitude and with undivided attention practices meditation in a fixed posture. But the reality is one and the same. The difference is only in name. All right, so all of these paths, the difference is only in name. The reality that they all lead to is the same. He who is Brahman is verily Atman. And again, he who is the Bhagavan, he is Brahman to the followers of the path of knowledge, Paramatman to the yogis, and Bhagavan to the lovers of God. The steamer had been going toward Calcutta, but the passenger, with their eyes fixed on the master and their ears given to his nectar-like words, were oblivious of its motion. Dakshineshwar with its temples and gardens was left behind. The paddles of the boat churned the waters of the Ganges with a murmuring sound. But the devotees were indifferent to all of this. Spellbound, they looked on a great yogi, his face lighted with a divine smile. His countenance was radiating love. His eyes, they sparkled with a joy. A man who had renounced all for God, who knew nothing but God. Unceasing words of wisdom flowed from his lips. Master, the Gyanis, who adhere to the non-dualistic philosophy of the Vedanta, say that the acts of creation, preservation, and destruction, the universe itself, and all its living beings, are the manifestations of Shakti, the divine power. If you reason it out, you will realize that all these are as illusory as a dream. Brahman alone is the reality, and all else is unreal. Even this very Shakti is unsubstantial, like a dream. But though you reason all your life, unless you are established in samadhi, you cannot go beyond the jurisdiction of Shakti. Even when you say, I am meditating or I am contemplating, you still are moving in the realm of Shakti within its power. You see, this is that idea that's been forming for a while, for me anyway, this notion that the thought world, the mind, the moving mind, that is Shakti. You know, Ramakrishna says the mind, the pure mind, the still mind, the mind without any vibration in it, that is Brahman. Brahman in motion is the power of Brahman. The power of Brahman is Shakti. And so Shakti is the thought world, which is the whole universe, because we've talked about that. Everything that you live in a mind and not in a universe. And so this mind and its movement is Shakti. And so anything that you do, anything that has a you involved, is within the realm of Shakti. But that realm is still just the realm of thought. It's not real. That which is holding up the thought, that divine isness, that divine presence, that is Brahman. But as long as you have an I, as long as you have a me, you're going to use the mind. You're going to survive in the mind. And the mind is that container for that egoistic self, for that particularized self. And so for us, our liberation is freedom from that, even when we transcend all of the definitions of particular and we surrender all of the precious limitations that have made us what we think we are. Then we're no longer trapped within the world of thought. We are, in fact, then the container of the universe, of all things. Thou art that at that point.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. So I know you're saying it's a silly question, maybe, but so the Shakti you're talking about, is that different from Maya?
Yes, it is different. I just want to make sure that we're recording. Is it recording? It doesn't look like it is. Oh, it is. Okay. Yes, it is different. What's different about it is Maya is more of a description of what you think the world is. Shakti is actually the power which presents the illusion. It's the action. Maya is the story that your mind makes up to describe it.
Okay.
All right. So your sense of story is your Maya, and each one of us has our own story, our own Maya, our own explanation for how the world is and what we are in it. Yeah. But Shakti is the power that we're using to decipher our story, to create our story.
So Maharaj,
Yeah.
so the Thakur says the Maya itself has two aspects, right?
Okay.
So that is just pure Maya, not part of Shakti, right? The one with the two different characteristics, that is just the Maya itself.
Well, Maya is our explanation of our experience. Maya is our description from our limited self, our ignorance. You know, yeah. Maya is not a thing in and of itself. It can't really be defined because Maya really is just a misunderstanding.
The illusion, right?
Right. It's our story of the illusion. You know,
I think she's asking about Vidya Maya and Avidya.
The Vidya Maya. Yeah.
oh, Vidyamaya and Avidyamaya.
The Vidya
Yes.
Maya. The two aspects of Maya.
Yes. That's of your own story about who you are. You have things about you that are true. That you've gotten right, right? And then you've got things about you that you've gotten wrong. And that's Vidya and Avidya. So to the extent that you know that you're a divine soul, to the extent that you get the suspicion that there's something else going on, and the efforts that you make to find truth, those are your Vidya. Those are things that are leading you toward oneness. And then your lust and your anger and your greed and all of that stuff that comes from believing that you're the body mind, that's your avidya. That's the stuff that will keep you deluded. Yeah. But those are different, those are kind of arbitrary because a thing is not a thing can be a notion can be both vidya and avidya, depending on how you approach it, depending on how you use it, right? I mean, wrong living is avidya, but in a sense, in the end, we come to know that all things were vidya, because even the experience of wrong living was necessary to bring us toward the light. You know, it's so in the end, the seer realizes that everything is vidya, everything is God, everything is divine. But for us on the path, some things are helpful to us and some things are not helpful. Those things that are not helpful are avidya, and those things that are helpful are vidya. And it really Go ahead.
So what you just now said, that is even the Vidya Maya is useful. So it is probably like what Thakur said, you use one tone to get the other one out and throw both of them away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. They'll both go away. They both disappear when the mind emerges, when there is no sense of me or mine in the mind, then everything is one without a second. So there's no Maya, there's no Vidya, there's no Avidya. They've all become one in the same. You realize that's what Thakur says when you get to the roof, you realize that the brick dust and the lime dust on the roof is the same as the stairs. And so the stairs were avidya if you were going up, and vidya if you're going up them, and avidya if you're going down them. But in the end, it's all one substance. It's all isness. It's all divine. That even vidya and avidya only exist in our ignorance. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
While we're ignorant. So even when you say, I am meditating or I am contemplating, still you are moving in the realm of Shakti within its power. Thus, Brahman and Shakti are identical. So that's where this idea of them both being mind comes from. But that mind and mind are always identical, but mind in motion and mind stilled are named different things, even though they are both fully the mind. They are the same. Thus, Brahman and Shakti are identical. If you accept the one, you must accept the other. It is like fire and its power to burn. If you see the fire, you must recognize its power to burn also. You cannot think of fire without its power to burn, nor can you think of the power to burn without fire. You cannot conceive of the sun's rays without the sun, nor can you conceive of the sun without its rays. What is milk like? Oh, you say it is something white. You cannot think of milk without the whiteness, and again, you cannot think of the whiteness without the milk. Thus, one cannot think of Brahman without Shakti, or of Shakti without Brahman. One cannot think of the absolute without the relative, or of the relative without the absolute. Yeah, you can't have changing if you don't have unchanging, right? You can't have this movement unless you have non-movement. You can't have noise unless you have silence. So it's this, but the real is the silence. The silence is always behind the noise, making room for the noise. Space is always behind objects, giving them a place to be. So that's the space is the real, that unchanging absolute is the final realization. So that's that silence, that's that immensity, that's that isness, with no distinguishing elements within. It is one without a second. And we can't conceive of it. It's impossible because the mind demands those three pieces. And in one without a second, there are not three pieces. So try as we may, we cannot conceive of it. Anytime we're conceiving of anything, we are within Shakti. And what we conceive of is Maya. We're going to be wrong. The primordial power is ever at play. She is creating, preserving, and destroying in play, as it were. This power is called Kali. Kali is verily Brahman, and Brahman is verily Kali. It is one and the same reality. When we think of it as inactive, that is to say, not engaged in the acts of creation, preservation, and destruction, then we call it Brahman. That's that quiet mind. And when it's not in an act of creation, your mind is always creating. You walk into the room, your mind immediately creates the room. It sets everything up in its relative existence to all the other things that you imagined to be in the room. So it's constantly creating the world that you live in, constantly manifesting the symbols of a reality that is beyond the mind, that's beyond the limit. And when it engages in these activities of creation, sustaining, and destroying, then we call it Kali or Shakti. The reality is one and the same. The difference is in name and form. And actually, the name and form, one is full of name and form, and the other one is full of nothing, full of emptiness, full of nirvana, as it were.
Swamiji, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So I mean, as you're saying that the acts of creation, preservation, and destruction is Shakti. So, I mean, since we have sense organs, aren't we always in Shakti? Aren't we always creating and
Yes, as long as we have not surrendered, yes, absolutely. The egoistic self depends on change to exist. It depends on history and story to have a sense of self. As long as we have an I, a sense of self separate from the whole, then yes, we are in Shakti, we are perceiving Maya, and we're containing Vidya and Avidya based on how we're dealing with that. So yes, the emptiness is absolute. I mean, there is no you there. There is no you there. All right. It's not, it's one without a second. And the reason they say that one without a second is because it's not, when I say there's only one, you will conceive of something that's only one that you're looking at. You'll objectify it. Right? And if you objectify it, that's not it. But you can't do anything but objectify it, because that's the nature of the mind. That's the nature of Shakti. We are that separate entity, and that's what causes the disturbance of mind. That's what causes the creation, the preservation, and the destruction, is us sorting ourselves out and separating from this whole. And then the whole just keeps gyrating, and we keep misinterpreting all of that movement and naming it, giving it forms, separate forms, and then lists of attributes for all of the forms, lists of boundaries, limitations, and restrictions on everything. And that's the world we live in. So as long as there's a notion of me within you, then you are squarely in Shakti, and you are creating, you are sustaining, and you are destroying continually. And but that power within you, within which all of that is when it's realized, that disappears. Like we saw in the Master, the mind disappears. Any awareness of mind disappears, and there is only peace. There is only contentment, only stillness, that's pregnant with love, but not manifesting love, is pregnant with wisdom, but is not naming wisdom. It's just the isness of that. It's a beautiful thing to contemplate, kind of let go, to try and play with letting go of particulars and just think of a love that is love. It's not acting as love. It's not manifesting as love. It is pure love. It's pure love. It is essential in everything. And so you imagine that as your beloved. There's not an object to hug. It is the hug itself. There's not an object for which to have feeling toward. It is the feeling itself. It is that love itself. It is. And that's how we lose our boundaries. That's how we marry the divine. That's the consummation. That's the surrender. So we just completely let go. The reality is one and the same. The difference is only in name and form. It is like water, called in different languages by different names, such as Jal, Pani, and so forth. There are 3 or 4 ghats on a lake. The Hindus who drink water at one place call it Jal. The Muslims at another place call it Pani, and the English at a third place call it water. All 3 denote one and the same thing, the difference being in name only. In the same way, some address the reality as Allah, some as God, some as Brahman, some as Kali, and others by such names as Rama, Jesus, Durga, Hari. Keshav with a smile. Describe to us, sir, in how many ways Kali, the Divine Mother, sports in the world? And the master with a smile. Oh, she plays in different ways. It is she alone who is known as Mahakali, Nityakali, Samasana Kali, Raksha Kali, and Shyama Kali. Mahakali and Nityakali are mentioned in the Tantra philosophy. When there were neither the creation nor the sun, the moon, the planets, and the earth, and when darkness was enveloped in darkness, then the mother, the formless one, Mahakali, the great power, was one with Mahakala, the absolute. Shyama Kali has a somewhat tender aspect and is worshipped in the Hindu households. She is the dispenser of boons and the dispeller of fear. People worship Raksha Kali, the protectress in times of epidemic, famine, earthquake, drought, and flood. Samasana Kali is the embodiment of the power of destruction. She resides in the cremation ground, surrounded by corpses, jackals, and terrible female spirits. From her mouth flows a stream of blood, and around her neck hangs a garland of human heads, and around her waist is a girdle made of human hands. After the destruction of the universe, at the end of a great cycle, the Divine Mother garners the seeds for the next creation. She is like the elderly mistress of the house, who has a hodgepodge pot in which she keeps different articles for household use. She has a junk drawer. She's got a junk drawer, and everything is tossed in there. So you see how this divine oneness, which is Ramakrishna's point here, it is the thing that binds us all together. And it is so important, really. It's essential to our peace. It's essential to living a beautiful life, that we know this, that the reasons for argument, the reasons for dissension are imaginary, that we are in fact one without a second, that our hearts are in fact the same. And that all of this strife that we're going through, all of this hatred that's being developed, that is Maya. That's the made up part. And it's because of our ignorance that we imagine evil, because we can't conceive of one without a second. And so we do the best we can, and it's just not quite good enough. We wander around bumping into things, getting our head banged and our ears tweaked and our and at some point we get tired of getting our head banged on the pots and pans, and we sit down and we refuse to move anymore. We're like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. And that's when Mother comes, when you stop thinking that you've got it under control, that you've got it managed, that you kind of know what's going on, then you can let go, and Mother is there, that love, that unity. Oh yes, housewives have pots like that where they keep the sea foam, the blue pills, the small bundles of seeds of cucumber, pumpkin, and gourd, and so on. They take them out when they want them. In the same way, after the destruction of the universe, my Divine Mother, the embodiment of Brahman, gathers together the seeds for the next creation. After the creation, the primal power dwells in the universe itself. She brings forth this phenomenal world and then pervades it. In the Vedas, creation is likened to the spider and its web. The spider brings the web out of itself and then remains in it. God is the container of the universe and also what is contained in it. Now, for fun, we can go back to the mind about this. When you're, imagine dreaming. So in your dream, you're standing on a rock and you're looking across this great plain, 150 miles across. And on the other side of that plain, you see another mountain. All right, now think about that. What's going on? Because you're in the space between your ears. So that 150 miles that you're looking across, that's 150 miles of Brahman you're looking through, right? And that mountain you see 150 miles away, it's still in here. It's not farther than one ear from the other. What is it that you are seeing? You're seeing Brahman. So you're seeing form, but you're looking through the air in the mind, in your dream, at this mountain. So God is both with form, the mountain, and God is without form. He is the air you're looking through. And both of them are the same substance. They are the same thing because it is mind alone that you are looking at. Whether it's you're looking through it like air or perceiving it like a mountain, it's mind stuff. It's your thought in your own mind that has become all of this. That is the divine. And the Gyanis say that this world's the same. That you look out there, you see the house next door. You're not really seeing a house next door. You're seeing a symbol of a house next door. And so like that, this world that we live in is a world of thought. And it's a mystery as to what exactly that is, because thought can be anything. It can manifest as anything. It can be formless like the air, like water, or it can become a mountain, or a planet, or a universe. It can be a friend or a foe. It can be safety and it can be danger. But it's all the same. It's just the mind. And to know that is to know the divine, to know God. It's to be fearless. Because once you know everything, to be merely a wave in the mind, what is there to be afraid of? You are the one without a second. What is there to be hungry for? You are that. All of this is within you. Right? And so all of the things in this world, they cannot fill you, right? Because they have no existence. That's why you can never have enough of anything. And the other reason is because you were never hungry to begin with. You never needed anything from the world. You were always complete. You were always one. Without a second, you were always the dreamer, safe in the bed, dreaming about the dangers and excitements of a world and a universe, and all of it manifested by the divinity of which you are, that substance of mind, which has no form of its own, but can be every form. So like a spider brings the web out of itself and then remains in it, God is the container of the universe and also what is contained in it. So he is the pure mind and he is the vibrating mind. They are both one and the same. Is Kali, my divine mother, of black complexion? She appears black because she's viewed from a distance. But when intimately known, she is no longer so. The sky appears blue at a distance, but look at it close. You will find it has no color. The water of the ocean, it looks blue at a distance, but when you go near it and take it in your hand, you find it has no color. The master became intoxicated with divine love. Yes, of course he would be talking about these things. He couldn't help but to slip into that knowledge and sing, is Kali, my mother, really black? The naked one of blackest hue lights the lotus of the heart. The master continued, bondage and liberation are both of her making. By her Maya, worldly people become entangled in woman and gold, and again, through her grace, they attain their liberation. She is called the Savior and the remover of the bondage that binds one to the world. Then the master sang the following song in his melodious voice. In the world's busy marketplace, O Shyama, you are flying kites. High up they soar on the wind of hope, held fast by Maya's string. Their frames are human skeletons, their sails of the three gunas made, but all their curious workmanship is merely for ornament. Upon the kite strings you have rubbed the manja paste of worldliness, so as to make each string, each straining strand, all the more sharp and strong. Out of 100,000 kites, at best, 1 or 2 breaks free. And you laugh and you clap your hands, oh my mother, watching them. On favoring winds, says Ram Prasad, the kites set loose will speedily be borne away to the infinite, across the sea of the world. The master said, the Divine Mother is always playful and sportive. There's a nice statement, a universal statement. This God in motion, God in action, the Divine Mother, is always playful, always playful, always in the mood for a good toss of the dice, always playful and always sportive. The universe is her play. She is self-willed and must always have her own way. Her own will doesn't, for a divine will, we're talking about something very unique. It's not like us, where we have a will and it's unfulfilled, and we have to go through a series of actions to obtain it. You see, the Divine Mother, her will is. There's no separation between the will and the isness. That's why it says she is self-willed, because there's nothing causing her will. There is no imbalance. There is no lack. There is no disharmony within her. Within us, our will is formed out of ignorance. Our will is formed out of lack or a perception of need, a disharmony or an imbalance. And so we are not self-willed, right? It is ignorance that causes our will. For the Divine Mother, her will and isness are the same, because as soon as it occurs in the divine mind, it is. It manifests.
This is a video, and I'm not even okay. This is for 007. This is for
What is that going on?
And I need you to know.
I'm looking for the mute all button. I'm sorry. Anyway, okay, it has muted. I don't know who that was or what that was. So a little bit of a little spice of Maya there. So the Divine Mother is always playful and sportive. This universe is her play. She is self-willed and must always have her own way. She is full of bliss. She gives freedom to 1 out of 100,000. A Brahmo devotee. But sir, if she likes, she can give freedom to all. Why then has she kept us bound in the world? The master, of course, immediately that story about Sita comes to mind. The master, that is her will. She wants to continue playing with her created beings. In a game of hide and seek, the running about soon stops if in the beginning all the players touch the granny. If all touch her, then how can the game go on? That displeases her. Her pleasure is in the continuing of the game. Therefore the poet said, out of 100,000 kites, at best 1 or 2 break free, and thou dost laugh and clap thy hands, O mother, watching them. All right. That's when that character said, oh, but her play is our death. And then Thakur smiles and gets up close and looks at him with a smile, knowing in his eyes. Ah, but who are you? He saw Kali directly in those eyes, pretending that she's suffering in the play at the hands of some divine God. So don't be fooled. This is your play. You're playing the role. You're the one that has kept yourself here in this sport of divine bliss. And when you're ready, you'll be done. because that divine will and isness are the same. All right.